Welcome to the LP Texas Candidate Highlight, where we shine a light on those sharing the Liberty message and their vision to help shape Texas politics. I'm Amanda Gibbs with the Comms Department, and my co-host is Nathan Polsky, who does a little bit of everything in LP Texas. Tonight, we've got Jeff Miller with us.
And we're live. My name is Nathan Polsky. As Amanda said, we've got her, and we've got Jeff Miller with us tonight as well. Let's go ahead and get started. Amanda.
So, Jeff, tell us who you are and what you're running for. Give us your little pitch.
All right, so my name is Jeff Miller, and I have lived in Texas for most of my life. Moved here when I was 6 years old. And I've lived here in the Bryan-College Station area for all that time. So it's been 42 years almost this summer. So I know the area well, and I've grown up here and raised my own son here and gone to the schools and worked here and lived under all of the laws and regulations and everything that have been passed by our wonderful government at all levels during that time. And I'm running for state representative, which to me is kind of like the ultimate political spot, because you're saying that I am representing the people in this district for the whole state, and it's a big state, as you know. And unlike the Democrats and Republicans who are fighting over who can best control you from Austin, I'm the candidate that's saying, it shouldn't matter who has the majority in Austin, because the power should be here in the local community where they don't have enough power to do things to you anyway. So that's my point, is that people are running these days on just fear of the other party. The Democrats say, well, if you don't vote for me, those evil Republicans will be in charge. And the Republicans turn around and say, if you don't vote for me, the evil Democrats are going to do all these terrible things. And I'm saying, don't let either one of them have that much power. Bring it back to the local community, and then it doesn't matter as much who's in charge. So that's my basic reason for running.
And what's your House district?
Oh, sorry, it's 14. So it actually pretty much incorporates just the city limits of Bryan-College Station. So maybe a little bit slightly outside that. For the most part, all the rural areas around us are in District 12, which we also have a Libertarian candidate for, Robert Profili. So I hope you'll also have him on here. And he's equally as talkative as me, but in other ways we're complete opposite. So it's great that he's like the country guy to I've lived in the city my whole life, and we're right next door to each other. So it's a great showcase of the diversity of Texans, because people outside the state, of course, think of us all as being like cowboy folk, and those of us who are here know that isn't the case.
Mm-hmm. Well, what inspired you to run?
Well, one thing that I noticed as I voted, I've been voting since I was 18 years old, as soon as I was old enough to. And my very first election was the governor race of 1994, which was George W. Bush versus Ann Richards. And by the time we got to the general election, I was very tired of both of them. And so when it came to voting, I looked at and I saw, oh, there's another candidate on the ballot. And I don't even know if I knew, if it was like today, then it was abbreviated LIB for Libertarian. I didn't even know what that even stood for. But I said, okay, I'm going to vote for this other person. Knew absolutely nothing about it. His name was Kerry Ellers, and he was the Libertarian nominee for governor. So before I even knew what a Libertarian was, I voted for a Libertarian in my very first election. So I just had to put that out there. But I noticed over time, when I looked at some of the races, including state representative, there were a lot of times where the person running was running unopposed, either unopposed in a primary or even in the general election. And I always thought there was sort of an issue with that. I thought, well, even if this person is just the greatest guy ever, that it seems like voters should have a choice. There should be some alternative. And I can't remember when I first looked into it, but I remember when I first found out that there was a requirement for paying a filing fee or getting petitions signed and all that. I remember thinking, this sounds like something that didn't the Constitution say you're not supposed to have like barriers to
Hmm.
the stuff? You're supposed to just be able to, if you want to represent people, you give the voters a choice. And so I already before again I knew anything about any of the legal things or lawsuits or any of that to do with what the Libertarian Party was fighting for. I kind of had a problem with that already, but I sort of had in the back of my mind, um, one day, I'll run for office of some sort. Probably like a lot of kids, who see themselves as, oh, maybe I'll run for president someday. I was talking with Clyde Garland from our county, and he said, no, that's not normal. Most kids don't think about doing that. I'm like, well, for president, they do. Maybe not state representative, but people do think about what would it be like if I was the president. Anyway, but yes, I was a dork in terms of like I started doing things like at the age of 19 when C-SPAN was, broadcasting congressional hearings and that sort of stuff, and putting when they first started putting like the legislation and the debates online for the first time, it was available on the web. I was like looking up and reading that sort of thing and watching C-SPAN video clips, of course, in those days because the internet was too slow to actually watch the entire thing online. Take you about
What you're
2 hours.
saying is you were always a political nerd.
Yes, but it kind of came and went over the years because like a lot of people, I do in fact have a life, and I became a father and then a single father, so that took up a whole lot of my time, and I kind of I had other important priorities that took my time where I wasn't constantly recording and watching C-SPAN and things like that all day.
Hmm.
So, but I always stayed somewhat in touch with what was going on. It just kind of came and went how much I was really paying attention. But yeah, I think uh, over the years, it was one of those things I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool to run for something, but I never really actively pursued it until I joined the Libertarian Party in 2020. And of course, that was right at the same time where COVID panic was breaking out, and all of the politicians from both major parties, all the way from the president on down to the local people, were going into lockdown mode in every way that they could. And I was kind of looking, I'm like, is anybody going to say something about this? Is anybody, challenging any of this? Are we going to have any kind of hearings? Is this all just being rammed through by so-called small government conservatives? Because my area is, very heavily Republican, and there was absolutely nobody who was standing up to this. Our state representative, John Rainey, posted a screenshot on his Facebook of the order from Governor Abbott saying businesses must close by this time on this date. And his only comment on it was, businesses must close at this day. So basically, he was like the Duke saying, this is what the king said, so just do what he said. Um,
No.
and so I wanted to run in 2020, but of course, with our wonderful laws we have in Texas, you had to have already filed by the previous December if you were going to
Hmm.
run for, something. So it was too late. So all I could do in 2020 was say that I was going to vote against every incumbent for anything because they all were complicit in all of that. But as soon as the next opportunity arose, in 2021, as towards the end of the year, the aforementioned Clyde Garland was recruiting people to run as candidates, and he said, "I'm looking for people who are willing to do nothing." And I said, "I can do that." So, so I
Well,
signed up,
y'all's
and
county does really good with recruiting candidates to run.
yeah, well, of course, in the midst of all this, I had become the vice chair of Brazos County LP, and then in 2022, I became the chair, and then it was not just about my own campaign, but about recruiting other people. And Clyde and I were the two, main ones that were recruiting. And my pitch was similar to his. He had his whole I'm asking people for people to do nothing. I sort of added on to that uh, because he kind of had this long thing that he'd go into, and I made it real simple. I was just like, basically everybody I knew, I asked them, "Are you willing to do this?" And it's sort of a secondary thing. Once you say yes, I have any willingness to do it, then you can kind of explore, well, what's the best fit for you as a candidate. And if I had actually gotten to a point where I had more people uh, than positions, then at that point we could have gotten to discerning, well, who was best for what. But as it turned out, we just sort of filled the positions as we could. And so for the first time, we have a candidate for every non-attorney race in Brazos County, except for one, because they did a sneaky thing where they added uh, what do they call it? Not unexpired term race where somebody had resigned and been replaced, but then the website did not list it as a race that was on the ballot in 2024, and then all of a sudden it was. So the Republican incumbent who was the replacement is just running unopposed because
That
nobody
wasn't
else filed.
intentional.
Oh, I'm sure. No, it was
Never
just an oversight.
intentional.
Could not possibly have done that to try to stop competition. But I do think it's funny. I really wish I had been there in the either the Republican Party headquarters or even just in the county thing to see when they saw that we filed a candidate for the county tax assessor collector, because it's been about 20 years since anyone has challenged anyone at that race. It's always just been one of those things that the incumbent just passes it on to their next person, and there's never any kind of dispute. So I imagine quite a few people when they saw that were doing double takes, like, what the hell? There's going to be another candidate in that race. What do we? How do we do that? What do we even do? So yeah, I'm quite proud that that's Megan Thompson that's running for that position. So I'm happy that we are at least having a name on the ballot, if nothing else, for all of those races, because I want people who go to vote, even if by the time they get to election day, they haven't heard our message, which obviously I'm trying to get it out there. But if they haven't, just looking at the ballot and seeing that many candidates with Libertarian by their name and going, wait a minute, who are these people? Is kind of what I'm trying to do, is just get that in people's heads that there is an alternative. And so we have more candidates running than the Democrats do, which I'm also happy about.
Awesome. Well, so with so many candidates running, when you win, because I have a lot of confidence in you, Jeff, winning, what are your top 2 or 3 priorities with what you can actually do at that position?
Yeah, that's a great question, because on the one hand, my kind of cop-out answer is just to say, well, I want to look at what laws we have that are bad and repeal them. But I realize that I'm not going to have the power to just snap my fingers and do that. So on a practical level, I have to be willing to get to know the other legislators that are elected and work with the people that I can work with that are willing to talk to me, willing to listen to me on the issues that we can find some common ground on, because I can't just go in there like a bulldozer and try to, run people over, because that's how we'll just get to a point nobody's going to talk to me, and they'll just, ignore me, and, they'll be focused on defeating me in the next election. So, but I think that if my attitude is, look, these are things that I have in common with you, let's talk, I think I actually would have the opportunity to get people from both parties to work with me, because they would have sort of a novelty, if nothing else. Like, this person is not what I'm used to dealing with the other party. I'm technically not the opposition party. So they'll have to deal with me as an individual, which is, if they're willing to. Obviously, some people won't. They'll just say this person is the enemy, like any other person of the other party. I'll deal with them in a different way. But if they're willing to, then I feel like we can talk about things like, for Republicans, it could be things like lowering spending, could be school choice and things like that. For Democrats, it might be areas of criminal justice reform or ending the war on drugs. Those could be the things we could work on more. But whatever people are willing to talk to me about, my attitude will be, I'm trying to trying to get the people in my district to have more freedom than they did when I went in there. And so that will be my goal. And the other goal, the main thing is just to listen to the people in my district about what are their concerns and how can I best help them to get government out of the way of what it is they're trying to do. Because in most cases, you ask people, what is it you can't do in your life that you want to be doing? And if it's not just fantasy stuff like, I want to live on the beach for the rest of my life. If it's like, I want to start a business, or I want to, go pursue whatever it is that I want to do in my life, here is how government is getting in the way. There was a great thing just posted this week on the Think Brazos podcast, which I did an interview with a couple months ago, and it was an economist talking about how people that want to build housing are not able to because of all the regulations that are involved, and they can't take advantage of the current housing market we have and provide what people need and want because of those government regulations. And my job would be, how can we get those things out of the way to allow people to build what they need to build and provide the services and goods that people want, because that's what society is supposed to be, supply and demand, and fill people's needs, not as a government mandate, but as allowing the market to work as it's supposed to.
Oh, I love it. Even though you don't want me to just live on my hippie farm.
I want you to do what you want to do.
All right. Amanda, did you have any other questions?
I just wanted to know if somebody wanted to find out more information about you or your campaign or your amazing party, where can they go to find out that information?
Yeah, right now, what I'm telling people to go to is BrazosLP.org. That's the Brazos County website. I do have a personal website also, that's vote-miller.org. But people, especially when people say, well, can I donate to you? How do I do it? Yes, I do have a donate option on my personal website, but I'm saying right now, because we're trying to help all these candidates and not just me, do that through BrazosLP.org. We also have, our events calendar shows you what meetings and events are coming up, and we will very soon have information up about all the candidates. And those that have a website, it'll be linked through that anyway, and those that don't, there'll be at least a page telling you about that person and basically what libertarians stand for. So that's our goal, is getting all that set up. But there's a lot already there. You can see pictures and things of what it is we're doing in the community, and you can find out more, and you can send us your information and email and all that, and get on our lists and get notified as to what's going on with events and all that stuff.
Great. All right.
Well, Jeff, you need to make sure you get all of those candidates to schedule with me and Nathan.
I will do my absolute best to make sure that happens.
Well,
there's a couple that it's going to be tough, but there's others that'll probably be more willing. So,
well, your chair is to bring down the iron fist.
Yeah, I will do what I can.
All right. Well, Jeff, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we leave?
Be excellent to each other and party on, dude.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Love you, Jeff.